Hello, crafty friends. I'm so excited to share my masks. You can make a mask and become a crafty creature yourself. And so today we are going to go through, you've guessed it, the kitty mask. And this is in honor of the birthday girl, Evie, who asked me to host a virtual birthday party where she and her friends started kitty masks, and they need this video to be able to finish their masks. So don't forget to hit subscribe. Like it if you love this video, like down below, and let's go through all of what comes in the kit, and then let's go through how to make the kit from simple to the complicated versions. So here's the kit. They come with a sticker that has the finished finalized mask on it, and they come in this little envelope, and you pull them out, and inside the envelope you have, oops, I forgot to pull that out. You have this wonderful picture of all the stitches printed on it, so for reference, and also the colors. And if you run out of thread, like if you mess up or something, it has the thread names, and these are DMC threads, so you can just go to any craft store and get them. And then it has recommended stitches. That's recommended for the complicated pattern. The easy pattern is all running stitch, and it's a very simple way of starting off on your embroidery, and it'll still look good. I'm going to show you at the end of this video how good these masks look with the complicated versus the simple. So the other things that come in here are this stitch guide, and these are all my stitches I recommend for all my kits. Some stitches you're going to use and some you're not going to use. I also have YouTube videos that take you through every stitch. So if you need to reference a YouTube video, go subscribe to my channel and you'll see those come up. But those go from all the way from how to thread your needle through some of the more complicated stitches that we do on some of my kits. We have a pack of threads. This one has the ribbon that comes with it so that you can attach it to your mask when you're finished and be able to put it on your head. And then it has the printed little mask pattern. And this is printed on organic cotton from spoonflower.com. And so it's a really nice organic soft fabric. And then on the back, we're going to attach a piece of wool blend felt so that those stitches aren't scratching your skin when you wear your mask. And then there's always a couple of little really high quality embroidery needles so that embroidery is easier for you. So let's get started.
We're going to get all our supplies out, and we have a hoop, some thread, needles. I have a needle threader here, some scissors, and of course the project top, which has the picture of the cat mask on it. We're going to get the hoop part out so that we can get the mask set up to stitch. And there are two pieces of the hoop. There's the bottom piece, which is a solid piece, solid round. And then there's the top piece which has a little screw to tighten the project on when you put it on. So we're going to put the bottom piece on the table. We're going to put our project on top. We're going to do the gray part in the middle starting, so we're going to put it there, and then we're going to pop the top piece with the screw on just like that. And now we tighten that screw up. You have to have pretty strong hands to tighten the screw, and then I'm going to pull the fabric tighter in the hoop so that it's more drum-like. So you should be able to hear kind of a drum sound when you tap it. Now let's get our thread out, and our thread comes in a pack with all the different colors, and it's just folded. So we're going to undo the thread, and here's the gray thread we're going to start with. I'm going to pull out one strand of gray thread. On a strand of thread or embroidery floss is 6 strands, and we're going to use 6 strands to do pretty much the whole entire mask. The fur on the more complicated uses less strands. I'm going to show you how I thread the needle with a needle threader, and we're going to get our needle out, and here's the needle threader. And what you do is you take your needle threader and you put the needle threader in the eye of the needle just like this. You can't really use that side. I want to use the smaller side for this needle. And then you take your strand of thread and you put it in the hole of the needle threader, and then you hold your needle and you pull through and it pulls the thread through. Now I can choose to sew with this thread as a single threaded thread. So I would put a knot on the end, just like this, but I would have to hold the tail that's on the needle end so that it doesn't come off the needle all the time. And you never want this thread to double because then you'll have 12 strands. So the other way to do this is to split your thread. And to split it is, we're going to find the middle or find the end of your thread, and you're going to split this into 3. There's 6 strands on the thread. So you're going to split it into 3 and 3 and put your finger in and slowly let it untwist. I'm letting it unwind on itself and letting it open up. And here you can see it getting kind of caught up. If you don't let it unwind on itself, it will knot up. So just be mindful of that and careful. So here, there, now we separated it into 2 different pieces. So now I have 2 separate pieces of floss with 3 strands each. With 3 strands, you put the thread on the needle, just like before. Put the threader in, put the thread on the needle, or in the threader, sorry, and then pull the thread through. And then this is going to double our thread. So we have 3 strands in this thread. And when we double it, we'll have 6 strands, which is what you need to sew the gray part on the mask. So here you match the 2 ends up, and then you pull it so that the middle has the needle. So I pull it, and then we're going to knot that. I'm going to show you this knot. It is called a quilter's knot. And you're going to take your needle and your ends in either hand, and you're going to point them at each other. And you're going to grab your end hand with your needle hand, and you're going to wind that thread around the needle a couple of times, and then hold the wind and pull the needle through, and you should have a knot. I have a great little tutorial video that can walk you through this step. We're going to start from the back coming up to the front, so our knot is on the back. And we will start at the first V, and we'll start at the top of the V line and go down to the point of the V line. And then we're going to go on the other side of the V and start at the top and go down. When we're done with that V, we're going to move our needle underneath there and go to the next V. This one I'm going to start at the point and go up. You can start at the point or either at the top, as long as you just follow the lines of the V over and over again. You do want to keep in mind to try to do all your V's in the same area. Do not skip around all over your project, because then you're going to be wasting thread. Here I am finishing up this area, and we're going to tie a knot. What I'm going to do when I have an excess amount of string and I'm not finished with my thread, I cut it about a finger's length long, like this. And then you're going to take that thread and you're going to split it into 2 separate pieces, and you're going to tie a double knot in it. And then you want to make sure that you cut that excess amount of thread after you tie your knot, so that it doesn't hang out in the back, because it will tangle up with your stitching as you're stitching the rest of the project. Here we're going to cut it, and now we have a nice little knot in the back. Look how textural this stitch is in the ears and on the front of the face. For the easy or beginner version, we're just going to take a running stitch on the edge of the gray, and you just go up and down. Very simple stitches. Don't make your stitches too long or they will tangle and get caught on things. You want them to be about the length of what you see on the V's. So we're just going to take your needle and go up and down along the edge of the gray lines on the front of the mask and on the ears. And for the complicated version, we're going to do what's called the split stitch. So we're going to come at the edge of the gray, and we're going to make a stitch down, and then we're going to go past that stitch about the same length, And when we go back down, we're going to do what's called splitting the stitch open and going back through the middle of the last stitch. And as you can see here, I come up. I'm going to open that last stitch up and go back down in the middle and split it open with my thread. And you can see this adds a nice furry textural outline stitch. So here are all my edge stitches on my simple one. And now let's do the black fur on it. And to do that, we're going to just, for the simple version or the beginner version, we're just going to take and do one stitch over each fur mark. So I am just following, even though there's 3 little lines, you're just going to take a 6-stranded thread and do one stitch over each fur mark. And we're just going to follow these fur marks kind of in a linear pattern around the mask and fill the whole entire mask with stitches and our black thread. For the complicated one, we're going to do a 3-stranded or 4-stranded thread, and it's a much thinner thread. And we're going to do the little, what I call crow's feet fur mark. So I'm going to go up at the point and then get the left side of the stitch, go back up and get the right side of the stitch and cover that. And then I'm going to go the middle and finish the stitch in the middle. And that way your middle point is creating a nice sharp point on the crow's feet. And as I show you the continued stitch of the crow's feet, I'm going to talk about the edge. You want to do the edge the same as we did for the gray. So for the simple version, you're going to do the running stitch in black. And for the complicated version, you're going to do the same stitch, which is the split stitch. Now we're going to do the nose. We're going to do a fill stitch in the nose with pink. And we're going to start in the middle of our shape. And we go up at the top or the bottom of our shape in the middle of the shape. And then you're going to take a straight stitch all the way up like that. Now we're going to take another stitch next to it, and we're going to do the same thing, repeating this same technique over and over again, but one stitch close next to the other stitch. And what's going to happen is it's going to fill in the whole entire shape the way the shape is formed, because you're stitching on the outside edge of that shape. For the simple version, you can simply do a running stitch around the edge of the nose, or you can try the fill stitch just like this. For the ear, we're going to take a running stitch for the beginner simple version, just around the pink line parts of the ear. So those pink line parts are the edge here that I'm doing, and then there's the other lines in the middle, and it'll just give a nice pop of pink and also add some texture. For a more advanced option, you can do what's called a long short fill stitch, and you're going to go in the middle just like we always start fill stitches. And this time we're going to take small stitches. I'm going to use those lines as guides to start my first initial straight line all the way. And we're going to match those stitches all the way straight to one end to another. And then we're going to take stitch next to it, just like we do with this fill stitch, but we're going to take those small stitches again, offset, kind of like in a bricklaying type pattern, offset from the first stitch that you made. As you do these stitches offset from each other and one right next to each other, you're going to find that it fills in this odd shaped ear beautifully and makes it a textural soft ear in the end. It's a fun stitch to do. It takes a little time, but it is very fun to do, just following the shape and offsetting each set of stitches. Here's the completed simple version with the fill stitch nose and the running stitch ears, and we're going to take white around the eyes, and we're going to just do the same running stitch on the outside edge of the white part of the eyes to give some nice texture and the pop of white color those eyes need. Here we are doing our running stitch just like that. For the complicated version, you can see the fill stitch, especially those ears, the offset fill stitch looks so great. You have a couple of options for the eyes on the complicated or the more advanced version. You can either do the outline in a split stitch, or you can do a fill stitch. I love how the fill stitch looks around the eyes, especially once you turn it into a mask. So starting in the middle, just like I always do with my fill stitch with a straight line, and I'm just going to go and stitch right next to each line and follow that odd shape, that cat eye shape, as I do stitch after stitch next to each other, and it's going to fill it in to a satiny white fill and add just this beautiful outline of an eye for your mask. So here I did the right side, and I'm going to go back to the left side and start stitching the same way, one right after the other, towards the left to do that fill. You can see why we start in the middle of the shape, because we want to maintain a straight line that looks good. So here's the beginning simple version, and we are going to add the silver gray in that same running stitch with 6 strands on the whiskers, because all cats need whiskers and our kitty needs whiskers too. So just do that up and down simple running stitch, and it just looks so good once you get that on there. You can see how the fill stitch really did well on the eyes, around the eyes in that white. Let's do the same stitch as we do on the edges for the whiskers of the complicated version, and that is the split stitch. And it's going to add a little pop of texture to those whiskers and pop them out forward from the black background. We're all done stitching the front up, and we need to learn how to put it in the mask form. This is the complicated version. Here's the simple version, and I'm going to show you how to clip and glue it into a mask. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clip around the edge on the outside line as to where those gray notches are, and we're going to just cut it all the way around, just like this. And then we're going to start taking our scissors and clip every single little notch out that is drawn onto the edge of the mask. And this is what this is going to help us do, is turn these little pieces of fabric to the back with some glue. I do not include the glue in the kit. All you need is a standard glue stick. I like to use the purple glue sticks because I like to see what the glue is doing on my fabric as I'm gluing it down. I would recommend not doing the insides yet and first tackling folding over the edges of the outside part of the mask first, not the eye. Leave the eyes alone for right now. So here's the glue I use. And we're just going to put glue on in sections. So I will start probably at the top here of the head and put some glue on. And then you're going to carefully fold over each piece and push it down to glue it. And you want to make sure you fold it over enough where you're hiding that little gray line. So you don't really want to see the line on the outside of your mask. So you can see how well this fabric sticks to that purple glue. And this is why I like to use the purple glue, because now I know where I haven't glued and where I need to go do some more glue. So I push it down and then I pinch it and make a sharp edge, just like that. And then we're just going to keep going around in little sections. So I'll do the ear, and then I'll probably do the other ear, and on and on. So let me speed up this video so that you can see some of the techniques I use for gluing all these little tabs down. Just finishing up this last little bit of around the edge of the face, and then we're going to do the same thing in the eye portion. It's a little fussier, but just because there's a tighter curve, but we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to just cut along those lines that are printed on the mask. Be careful not to cut your stitching. If you cut your stitching, you're going to have to do it all over again, and it's going to be very difficult now that we've cut this guy out from the main piece of fabric. So just be careful with your cuts. You don't have to cut all the way up to the stitching, just cut close to the stitching. And then we're going to start gluing it around. So let's start gluing these pieces. Just like before, this one I put a generous amount of glue right on the edge of that stitching, and I just push it in and slowly pinch as much as I can. Now that everything is glued in place, we can get our piece of felt and put that on the back. The first thing we need to do is add the ribbons to that piece. And the easiest way I have found to do this is you cut a sharp angle on the ribbon, one end of the ribbon, and use that needle that you used for stitching and put that on the ribbon. You're going to want to place the ribbons on the edge, kind of midway on the outer two sides of the mask. So I'm going to put my needle on, and then I'm going to pull just that first part of the ribbon through to the inside part of the felt. So here I'm going to put it in. Now you're going to have to hold it and wiggle it a little bit to get it through that felt, but eventually the felt will give way and open up a big enough hole. So see how I'm wiggling. You can use a pair of pliers to pull it through too. And then you just tie a little knot. I usually try to tie a double knot so it doesn't come through, but you tie your knot on the underside and then it will stay secure. There. We're going to do that on the other side as well. And now we have two ribbons, and I use the clips, or you can use pins to put the felt in place. It's very necessary that you pin or clip this in place. I sell the clips on my website, and it's just important that you have it held in place because it will shift as you're stitching the blanket stitch around the mask. So I especially clip the corners because those are you want to match up. Now that it's all pinned and put together, I'm going to show you two different ways of securing it. For the beginner or the simple version, I'm going to use what's called a whip stitch. So I start my needle in the middle in between the two fabrics so the knot gets hidden. And then you're just going to go every time from the back felt part up to the front part of the mask. And you're going to go from back to front, and this creates what's called a whip stitch, and it's a very easy stitch. You just want to make sure that your stitches are close enough to make the mask secure. For the more difficult version, we're going to do what's called a blanket stitch, and that one requires you to start off a little differently, and then you're going to be catching a loop every time. So we're going to start off actually right in the middle, just like before. We're going to take a stitch from back to front in the same exact place where you started it. And then we're going to put our needle up at the top of that piece of thread. Now I'm going to go to the next section from back to front. And before I pull that all the way through, I'm going to catch that loop and I'm going to pull that up as I secure the stitch. Again, I stitch it from back to front, I catch the loop and pull that up to secure the stitch. And that's called a blanket stitch, and it adds a little trim of black thread on the top, as well as shows the stitches on the edge. Here's the finished whip stitch around the simple beginner version, and we're going to secure the eyes now in place. We just want to secure that fabric in the middle so that it matches up as we're stitching and we're not fighting it. So I'm going to take a few pins and pin that together on 4 sides of the eye, the 2 corners and the 2 middle parts. And then we're going to do the same stitch, the whip stitch, around the eye in the same manner that we did around the edge of the mask. We're going to do that on each eye. And here are the finished masks. This is the simple beginner version, and you can see how beautifully it stitches up. And there's the eye secured, and it is such a comfortable little mask and looks beautiful on your wall. And here's the complicated version, and you can see the fills and the split stitch that we used and how different the outline or the blanket stitch looks on this one. So let's see what it looks like on. Okay, so here we have our finalized masks. 1, 2. I walked you through how to do the simple version and through the complicated version. You can see, here, I'm going to hold it up to my face. You can see the simple version is a little simpler. You do see some of the print marks showing through, but it looks so good. And a 5-year-old can do a running stitch. So you can complete this whole thing on your own as a 5-year-old and up. And this is a very complicated version. It includes fill stitches and some other split stitches and other stitches that are a little more advanced. But for those of you who want more of a challenge, this is a great way to challenge yourself with embroidery. And what an amazing little gift or fun thing that you can have to remember your crafting with. These make great wall hangings, by the way. I hang them up on my wall, kind of like this, and I put a little nail in and hang them up, and they make great wall hangings. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, to like this video if you enjoyed walking through our kitty masks, and have a wonderful crafty day.